In the previous sessions, we've looked at the basic building blocks of constructing bass lines. We've learned that once we've settled on a mode and a key, we know what notes are available to us for building a bass line. And from the previous session, we now know that notes 1, 3, 5 and 7 are our strong notes, whilst notes 2, 4 and 6 are a little weaker, and therefore they're often called passing notes. And we've also learnt that we can add some interest to a bass line with the positioning of both these strong and passing notes, and the order and the manipulation that you do that in is down to your own creativity. But if you consider the theory we've discussed so far, and if you've been practicing, you'll probably have realised that it isn't really that much of a stretch to write a bass groove. We are fairly limited to 7 notes, and we're fairly limited as well to the order that we can put them in. Now, what we're going to do for this session is we're going to move on a little and look at more ways in which we can improve writing a bass line and perhaps expand the palette a little. And the first of these that we're going to look at is called modulating. Now, when I say modulating, in music theory, that means moving from one key to another key during the course of the song. Pop music uses that quite a bit. They'll write in a minor key for the verse, and then it'll change to a major key for the chorus, and then move back down to a minor for the verse. Well, we're not going to do that here because it's a little bit pop music cheesy. What we are going to do instead is we're going to change key. Now, so far, we've been writing in a major key. I mean, particularly in all our instances so far, I've been writing in C major. Now, it should come as no surprise that no matter what major key you're writing, whether it's C, D, E, F, G, A or B, it's going to more or less give the same feeling. Major keys tend to be happy keys. Nursery rhymes, advertising jingles, they're all written in a major key. And whilst it is suitable for some genres of dance, such as euphoric and uplifting trance, you'll find that most genres of dance music actually use a minor key. Now, I'm sure you've all heard that a minor key sounds sad or somber. It's the complete opposite of a major, and well, that's complete rubbish. I've yet to hear a song written in a minor key that sounds sad without the composer actually wanting it to sound sad. The fact is, you can write music in a minor key and still make it uplifting because it's the full composition that exhibits feeling. I'm not going to deny here that the choice of key is important for giving some of the feeling. It's just that it isn't just down to that. It's a combination of factors such as your choice of chords and the way that your chords progress. They can all give the feeling to the music. So what we're going to do, I'm going to start by I'm copying this down. For those who don't know Logic, that button there simply copies the exact same channel settings down. And we'll just copy that MIDI down, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by playing this back so you can just listen to our bass line in major again before we move on. It sounds okay. It's not bad. It sounds a little bit too happy, or maybe even a little bit cheesy. So what we're going to do is going to give it a more serious edge, and to do that, we're going to change it to a minor key. Now, for this example, we'll move to F minor. There's no particular reason for that. I've just thought F. We'll go for F minor. So the first thing we need to do when we're moving to a different key is we need to know the notes that comprise our different key. Now, in your DVD boxes, in the pamphlets, there's a list of all the keys, all the notes that comprise every minor key. Now for F minor, I think it's F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat. I haven't designed the pamphlets yet, so I can't read them. But I'm pretty sure that's the keys that are in F minor. If it's not, this is going to go horribly wrong. So the first thing we need to do is we need to change all these notes to fit into that scale. So our very first note, we want that to be an F. So we'll move that down to our F there. Right, so our first note is an F because we're in F minor. Now our second note there is an A. Now A isn't in F minor, it's an A flat. Now I'm just going to quickly explain the principles between sharps and flats. All it is a sharp and a flat is the same key. It just depends whether we're working up the scale. If we're working up C, D, E, F, G, A, then they're all sharps. If we're working down the scale, they become flats. So it's the same note, we just refer it to either a flat or a sharp. Now because we're moving down, it becomes a flat. So G sharp is actually a A flat. So we have our first note of an F, then we have our A flat. Now that's in our scale. C is in F minor scale. That's certainly in our scale. And G is also in F minor scale. So basically, it's one note to change that from a C major to an F minor. Now, let's have a listen to how this sounds now in F minor. And what we'll do is we'll compare that to our major bass line. So I'll just stretch that out there, and I'll move that over there. So what we're going to do is we're going to move from a minor to a major bass line. This first one here is the minor, then we're going to move to the major. So listen to the difference. Well, you can hear there straight away, or I can anyway, that the minor sounds that bit more serious. It's a bit more edgy. It's a bit more deliberate, and that's why a lot of dance music is written in a minor key, because it gives off that edgy, serious, deliberate feel to it. Now, that's sounding quite well, that minor there. But what we can do is we can expand on that even further and make it a bit more tense, a bit more edgy. So let's just rewind that, and I just want to mute that so we don't want to play that anymore. It's a bit cheesy and soft. Right, now what we can do is we can add some more tension to this and make it a bit more edgy. And we can do that just by thinking in semitones. Now, the theory is that if any note is a semitone below or above the note that either precedes it or follows it, then you'll create some tension. Now, it's important to remember here that we're talking about a semitone, not a full tone. So how we can do this is we'll do it by an example. We'll take this note here, and what we'll do is we'll push it up by a semitone. So what we're doing there is we're going from our note there to our note there, which both these are in the scale. That one's out of the scale. So let's have a listen to the difference that makes. Now, can you hear that strange tension that's built up in there around that area when we move from that key, down to this note here? There's a strange tension there, and a kind of a surge in the music. Now, the reason for that is because although you may not be pitch perfect or have any musical training whatsoever, your mind still subconsciously knows what notes are in that scale, and it determines that from this very first note there. And following the notes, so it knows that note doesn't belong in this scale, and because it doesn't, it creates that sense of anticipation. You want it to resolve. Now, what's important here, especially important, is that moving that note there, just moving it up that semitone, it now produces a note that isn't in our scale. That note there, F sharp, isn't in the key of F minor. So what we've done is we've created a note that doesn't exist in our scale, and therefore that becomes known as an accidental note. Now, accidental notes are accepted in music theory, but you have to be careful how many accidental notes you introduce into your music. For example, we could introduce another one, for example. We try moving that one down there and just have a listen to that. Now, if we introduce too many accidental notes, it'll become difficult to determine a key. And as I've mentioned, although your listeners aren't musically trained, the subconscious mind is. So if you introduce too many of these accidental notes, what's going to happen is your music's going to end up sounding all over the place, and there's no solid foundation. Now, if you wanted to continue building a kind of tension into your bass riff, you can't simply throw in a load of accidental notes because, as I've said, it's going to sound all over the place. So what we do is we try moving from a strong note to a weak, then from that weak note move to an accidental, then to another weak note, before finally resolving to a strong note. Now, this final strong note, that final resolve there, should preferably either be to the first or the fifth note in the scale, because these are the two strongest notes in our scale. We have the tonic and the dominant. They're the strongest notes. Now, can't stress the importance of resolve enough. Just like in the earlier session where we moved up the scale and we stopped on the leading note, we had that sense that we needed it to resolve, and music has to resolve. If you build too much anticipation by dragging it out too much, it tends to become uncomfortable to listen to, and you'll find that people will turn off. In some respects, I suppose you have to compare it to film. A movie film is. All movies follow a similar pattern. They're split into scenes, and each scene builds up tension, but you'll find that tension is released in parts as the film progresses. All the time, whilst the main story builds and builds, these side stories resolve to keep us interested until the final main story, the main point of the film, resolves. Now, that is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly important. Imagine watching a film where the hero meets his arch nemesis for the final battle and the movie ends. Well, you're going to feel unfulfilled, and it's the exact same with music. I suppose in some respects you could say the arrangement could be the movie, building up to that final battle as the track progresses, but each scene in the movie is basically a few bars of an instrument, and that instrument motif or melody should resolve every so many bars. Now, how many bars you choose to resolve over is entirely up to you, but generally you should look at it as a question and an answer. By that I mean the first however many bars or beats act as a question, and then that's followed by the same number of bars or beats, or perhaps less or more bars or beats that provide the answer, the resolve. Now, generally you'll find that the less melodic genres such as tech house, techno, minimal, they tend to question and resolve over a period of one bar or the absolute most 2 bars. But you'll find that the more melodic genres such as say progressive and French house, disco house, they'll tend to resolve over 2 or 4 bars. Now, I need to point out that isn't a rule. This is music theory we're discussing here. No one's invented it. It's just a result of years of analytical listening. So, of course, you are free to do what you want. I'm just trying to point you in the direction of how the music theory works and how all dance music utilises this theory. So what I think we'll do there is, I think before we move on, we'll just have a quick sum up of what we've covered so far, because it's going to get more and more complicated as these sessions progress now. So we can say, you know how to create scales in any key, and you're well aware of all the different modes of music, and you know that these provide us with a list of notes that will harmonise with one another, basically telling us what notes are available for us to use when we build a bass line. We've also looked at how a different mode can affect the sound or the feel of the music. You heard there that as we changed from a major to a minor, there was certainly a more serious, edgy feel to it. And we've also learned that the use of strong and weak notes alongside alongside our accidental notes like that there and that there, they can help build some anticipation into the bass line. Now, as in the previous session, I could run over programming a number of bass lines and throwing accidental notes in and so forth, but I really don't think there's any real need to. You know the notes to use, you know how to jump from weak to strong to build anticipation, and you know how to choose the key you want to write in now. And you also know how to throw in the odd accidental. I mean, that is down to just sheer, well, let's try pushing this note down here or just up by a semitone. What I would recommend you do now, though, is take some time out again to program some basses using this theory we've done here. Start writing in a minor key. Hopefully you've kept your basses that you wrote from the previous session in a major key. What you need to do now is change all them to a minor key and introduce a few accidental in there and see how the feel of the music changes. Basically just experiment and have a bit of a play around and get used to writing bass lines using this theory that we've discussed so far. And after you've written a few bass lines and you've played around a bit, what we'll do is we'll move on to the next session. In that, we're going to look at extraction, how to extract a bass line from other parts of music.